we'll just get it going.
All right.
All right, so the first thing that I'm gonna have you do is just introduce yourself and tell us something that not many people know about you.
Sure. Carlos Gonzalez. I'm an certified athletic trainer. I've been a certified athletic trainer just a couple years. Before that, I was a strength coach for a long time and a personal trainer. That's kind of how I got into this field. A lot of the reasons why I got into this field is mostly because I was a gym rat and because I was interested in the body and learning more. Initially, it was like, oh, I want to learn how it's the best way to work out for myself. I was just like selfish basically. And then I was like, oh, this is interesting information. And I started getting further and further. I started meeting more and more interesting people. And a big reason that happened is because initially, early in my life, I was really into martial arts, and I still am. So something that people don't really know about me is I have 3 black belts, and it's something that I've always been interested in, martial arts. And the reason why I got into kinesiology in the first place is because I thought my counselor, when she told me like, oh, it's kinesiology, she's like, oh, you do exercise and fitness, and you also like dance, and like, you get to learn some martial arts. So I was like, oh, cool. All right, I'm in. That's all I needed to hear. I basically got 1 unit out of it. That was in karate, but that's it. But yeah, that's how I started off in this journey. Yeah.
Dope, man. So 3 black belts. Which martial arts do you have them for?
So one of them is in Taekwondo, which is like something people usually hear about. Karate is the other one. People usually hear that one. And the third one's in Hapkido, which people don't usually know what that is, but it's one of those martial arts that's like a branch off Taekwondo.
Mm,
It's a little more of it's like Taekwondo where you kick and punch, but you also have some grappling moves. But my primary interest now is Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, just because it's very hands-on, learn a lot of locks, and it's very much a chess game. It's more mental,
hmm
so that interests me. And plus, like MMA is very popular, so you see these like moves, and you're like, oh, cool, I know what they're doing. Like, and as I learned that, I got more interested. Uh,
Yeah,
it's something I want to get into again once quarantine kind of dies out. Right now, it's not going on, so
right. Yeah, it's a very close contact for sure. More the closest one there is, right?
yeah,
Because in
exactly.
the other martial arts, you're like creating space to be able to like swing, kick, and all that. But with jiu-jitsu, you have to close the gap, and
Close the gap,
that's
yeah,
how you get the best connection when you're trying to submit somebody, right? You gotta have no space.
yep,
Um,
exactly.
yeah, no, I've tried jiu-jitsu, and it's
Cool.
definitely fun, man.
Yeah, yeah.
It's crazy that you don't think about how great of a workout it is as well, because you, when you're moving and you're trying to control somebody else's weight and they're trying to do the same thing to you, that struggle creates so much work. Like you're constantly getting weight on you and pushing weight away from you, and it's heavy weight, right? It's another
Yeah,
person.
the body, yeah.
It's a body, yeah. So I know I've tried it, and it's hard, it's tough,
Yeah,
and then mentally, like you said, as well, as it challenges you in every way. Like you gotta prepare for certain things. If you feel like a hand is coming up, you got to be like, oh, I know what he's trying to do.
yeah,
Like you got to
exactly.
cut that off, and then you got to try to figure out how to cut them out or how to do your own submission. So that's dope, man. That's dope. So that means you're not getting your ass kicked anytime soon.
Hopefully not. I mean, luckily, I've never really needed to use it for anything,
Yeah.
which is a good thing, you know. But it's always one of those things that it's like interesting because it humbles you for sure.
hmm
Because every person that's beaten me in like a sparring match or in a jujitsu, like when we roll or things like that, has been someone that's older and looks physically less intimidating than you
hmm
would think, right?
hmm
It's never the big guy that you should be scared of. It's always the smaller guy that's like the quiet guy, the wise old man, right? And exact like the Mr. Miyagi. Those guys are just crazy. They just know these tricks. That you're like, how did you do that? Like they beat you and you feel humbled. And you're like, oh, I'm not very like not necessarily the biggest guy either, but also I feel like, oh, I should be able to handle a 6-year-old man when I can't.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's technique, right? And
Technique, yeah, or
that's
brute
one thing.
force.
Yeah, that's one thing that I remember when I was taking the jiu-jitsu classes, that at the last like 10 minutes we were sparring,
Mm-hmm.
like for real, to practice what we had been learning for that session. And I just remember that the higher belts, they're ability to just stay calm. Like they weren't even sweating, they weren't even breathing hard, while everybody else that was a white belt was just like sweating and can't breathe. And
Wailing and
yeah.
yeah, yeah.
So it was super interesting to see that. It humbles, like you said, it does humble like the newcomers,
Mhm.
when you see how relaxed they are and how they're able to just do what they want. You can't do anything about it until you get the experience and you learn how to be like them, pretty much.
Yeah.
But that's dope, man. That's dope. So you were a personal trainer and a strength and conditioning coach, and so did you work at a gym, and like is that how you kind of found out about athletic training, or athletic training was something you learned like early and then you figure like personal training and strength and conditioning will help me get into that world?
So I have a long winding road. I'll give you the highlights, but essentially when I started, I wanted to be a pharmacist, which sounds like the worst job in the world to me right now. But I was good at chemistry. It's stable. It pays well, right?
Mhm.
And I quickly found out that that's not what I wanted to do. I wanted to be around people that were active and all that. So I switched to kin, right? Initially, yes, I was a CSUN and I wanted to apply for the athletic training program. And a lot of the reasons why I didn't initially apply for the athletic training program were my own self confidence and my lack of uh, what I thought was ability to be proficient in the clinical world. I didn't have any hands on experience. I barely had a couple jobs under my belt and none of them were related. So a lot, though I could have, looking back, I could have applied and possibly gotten in. Not, I wasn't necessarily bad on grades or anything like that. It was just a confidence thing. A lot of it was like I talked myself out of it. So I was like, I'm just going to be regular kin and look into other fields. So I looked into physical therapy, did some hours there, and I learned really quickly, and I still know this now, that physical therapy isn't for me. It's slow paced, and it's not the population I want to work with necessarily. Uh, there's a lot of crossover information that I do enjoy learning, but I just don't feel like that's the right fit for me. And as I went further in my path, I happened to meet someone that was a personal trainer, and I had them like train me a couple of times to like see what it was about. And I thought, oh, this is awesome! Like, so you basically work by like teaching people how to move their bodies and get them to their goals. Sounded amazing, right? And then at the time, was like learning kinesiology, but had no reason to apply it in any way besides for myself. So this was a good way to like make it a goal to push forward. So I did the NASM exam, which is like the National Academy of Sports Medicine. I think because that's what he did, and that's all I knew. I knew very little. I was kind of kept to myself when I was at CISA initially, so I didn't really talk to many people. So he told me that was a good certification, so I did it. And as soon as I did that, I applied for the SRC. The SRC just started. SRC Student Recreation Center, right at CSUN. And what I found there was a lot of people that knew a lot more than me. So everyone that applied for the job that got it with me at the same time was at the time I was in my early 20s. Everyone was over 30 and was in the game for like 5 or plus years in personal training. So I was like, oh, I know my stuff. I thought I knew my stuff because I read the book and I read it back and forth. I was, oh, I know everything in the book, so I must know everything about fitness, right? That's what I thought. But as soon as like anything practical happened, that I was like, oh, I don't know how to cue there. I don't know regression there. I don't know what that exercise would be if I don't have this piece of equipment. I was like, oh wow, I don't know anything. And what I quickly found is that all these people were willing to help me by teaching me the tips and tricks of the trade. And what led to further was like, oh, I realized, oh, I have to do CUs. I have to keep learning about this stuff. And as soon as I started, that's really what started my journey into athletic training later. I realized really quickly I love learning, and I loved learning when it's something I can appreciate and apply. So once I went to my first workshop, I was like, wow, I'm hooked. I want to learn more about this stuff. And I really started like going to as many things possible, especially because at the time, a student gets a discount, right? And the SRC had a great program at the time where they would pay for your CUs and workshops, and they had a lot of in-house stuff. So I had no reason not to go. As I got older, I realized that personal training wasn't for me necessarily, because as soon as you have one athlete as a client, you realize, wow, this is awesome. And then you kind of want to only work with athletes, at least for me, right? I had a couple people that were extremely athletic. They happened to be in the boxing club, so obviously I could relate on the martial arts, self-defense stance. People that were wrestlers, and people that were into just like rugby, things like that. So then later I learned towards my senior year what a CSCS was, a certified strength conditioning specialist. And I was like, oh, what? That's, to me, it sounded like a challenge because I was like, oh, it's certification you need your bachelor's for. So it's something that
Mhm.
must be more difficult, right? So something that's more, and it is something that's held at a higher light compared to a regular certification, right? So that was my challenge to myself. So I started taking this resistance training class at CSUN, which quickly led me to learn more about Olympic lifting and about like strength stuff related to sport. And in that class, I met someone named Jaron. Shout out to Jaron. You probably never like remember me, but he was doing hours with Wyatt Blue, which is the guy who's in working for Game Time. I think it's Game Time Sports Medicine now. He does the per diem work for athletic training, right?
Mhm.
And at the time, Wyatt had just started on his own. He just had moved from Vegas, so he was kind of figuring out his path as far as sports clubs. He's working at CSUN, and I already had done hours before in the past in athletic training, but unfortunately, the experience I had wasn't good. I would say that was not a good highlight for why athletic training is a good career path. It was just one of those athletic trainers you can imagine. It was like older, burnt out, ice pack, stim. That's all they really did. But why it was different, he showed me that you can integrate strength conditioning, my CSCS, my personal training with the athletic training stuff. So obviously, I was always like picking his brain and kind of wanting to learn more about sports medicine. And at this point, I'm in my senior year, I had to like go further. Like, there's no way I could go back. So my counselor was like, "You need to graduate." I'm like, okay. So once I graduated, I started looking into athletic training, and I found masters. So I applied to the three that were in California at the time: Chapman, Cal Baptist, and APU, Azusa Pacific. And then I got into Azusa Pacific right away. And I did, the reason why I picked Azusa Pacific, because they were the only one that had strength conditioning classes at the time within their curriculum. So that was all I needed to hear. They did treat me really well when I went over there. They like wined and dined me and all that. So I was
Yeah.
like, cool, I'll go here. And that's kind of how I got into it. Once I was in the program, I had no regrets. I really enjoyed everything I learned. Like anything else, like I want to learn more, right? So I felt like, oh, I got a taste, and I was like, what? This is it? Like I want to learn more about the body, and like, but there's always more to learn. So
Yeah, no, and I think that the way that you've kind of set yourself up with like personal training, strength and conditioning, and with athletic training, you can work with somebody from beginning to end, right? Like with, I think that with athletic training, we can do beginning to end, but at the end, it's just kind of like, okay, we're reaching the sports specific area and we can help them with that. But past that, the strength and conditioning coach is going to be the one that really works on them to increase their strength and agility and change of direction and speed and all of those little parameters that as athletic trainers we don't really get taught all of that, right? We get taught how to do sport specific movements so they can be back on the field, but once they have no pain, they got the 4 range of motion, 5 of 5 out of strength, they're good on our end. They're like, yeah, they're
yeah,
doing all the movements, they have no pain, they're good to go back. But in reality, to get them at that like same pace that they were before, you do have to work on that strength and conditioning component. And I think that you having that certification and experience working with athletes kind of gives you that extra edge to push the injured athletes a little bit more, right?
right.
So that's cool, man. And I feel like we kind of have a similar path in that regard. Like I started working at a gym first as
Mhm.
like maintenance guy, administration, front desk, selling packages, and then I was like, okay, let me actually learn about personal training. And I luckily for me, I worked at a strength and conditioning clinic where it
Oh,
was
cool.
like private personal trainers. So we had like 20, 30 personal trainers in there and they were all running their own business.
Oh, cool.
So we also had registered dietitians that were personal trainers. We had physical therapists that were personal trainers. They were all there just making their money, training their 40 hours a week, and renting the facility for an hour. So that's where I kind of started getting the ideas of, damn, there's a lot more careers in this field
Mhm.
of health, right? And athletic training was one of those. Um, and for me, it was just like the more medical side. I became an EMT for a year, and that helped me with the evaluations and kind of getting a systemized approach of like, emergencies and taking care of that. So um, that's cool, man. I feel like we have a little bit in common in that. Um, so with your education though, so you got your what was your bachelor's on? Kinesiology?
In kinesiology, it's from CSUN, yeah. Isn't the emphasis was applied fitness, yeah.
Applied fitness. Okay, for sure. And I feel like that's something that they tell us as to have that as a plan B. If we don't get in, if we're trying to get into the athletic training program, but we don't, your
Yeah.
plan B should be applied fitness because those classes relate more towards the athletic training, like prerequisites and athletic training classes that you would take when you're in the program, like biomechanics and exercise science. Um, at least that was what our director told us.
Yeah. No, I would say that's true. Like, I definitely spent too long at CSUN. I changed my mind a lot. I changed my emphasis a few times.
Yeah.
I was trying to figure myself out, and at the same time, I was also taking classes that I didn't need. I just wanted to take classes for fun, like
Yeah,
art classes and like screenwriting, things like that, just for fun.
for sure.
And so at the end of the day, my counsel was like, "Why do you have 150 units?" I was like, "I don't know."
Hey, as long as you were learning, right? Like
I was,
you were
yeah.
taking classes because you wanted to as well. It
Yeah.
wasn't like you were forced to take them because of your major. It was just you were interested in them.
Hmm.
And I did that as well, man. It took me 9 years to graduate,
Oh, okay. Yeah.
so I took a lot of classes as well. So you got your bachelor's in applied fitness, then you got your master's in athletic training, and now you're certified. You've been certified for a year now.
About a year, yeah, just a little
Okay.
over. Yeah.
For
Yeah.
sure. And so like one thing that I like to know is just how your experience was transitioning from a student to a professional. So right now with COVID, the volume of work, the work that we wanted is probably not the same as in the past years, but still, how has your experience been from that from transitioning?
I'd say that it was very trepidant. I was very like worried about doing anything wrong, like most people will say.
Hmm.
I would say all my preceptors were very caring and very much wanted me to succeed. So there's nothing on their part. I just felt like very much of my experience was kind of in the same lane, if that makes sense. So a lot of my experiences were from a football background that was in on the field emergency care and then how to treat specific injuries. So fortunately and unfortunately, I got to see the same injuries over and over again a lot of the time, which made me very strong at that. But obviously, if I was to dive away from that, I was less confident. Uh, for example, I saw a lot of lower extremity, which most people do, a lot of low backs and a lot of shoulders. I didn't see very much gen med at all. Like that was my weakness. I also felt like going through my program, we talked about all these concepts, but unfortunately, for me, I'm an application guy. If I don't get to see it in a real person, then it's gonna kind of go one ear and out the other. So when I first graduated, my first few jobs, like most people, were per diem. And the first thing I took was a judo tournament, and because in my head, I'm like, oh, I know martial arts, I know what is possible for injuries, right? And I have an idea. Uh, and I thought at the time, the director that was talking to me about it was like, oh yeah, great, you'll come in, you just need a certified, and you'll have a nurse. So oh great, nurse is gonna be there. Worst case scenario, I go refer to her, right? So get there, they're like, oh, the nurse backed out. It's just you.
Damn.
And there was probably 10 mats and just me. And it was all ages. So, and I had very little pediatric experience. So of course, the first few, I ran out there thinking they're dying, right? And they literally just like bump their heads or, or just like in a bad mood. And I was just like, hey, it's okay. Don't worry about it. What do you feel? Like this and that. And a lot of the things I saw with the older adults were actually just gen med stuff. So as I went through that day, at the end of the day, I came out exhausted. It was a long day, not only in hours, but also mentally taxing because I had to like really stretch my knowledge By the end of the day, though, I was super confident. By the 10th time you hear someone talking about how they have this like weird pain in their like lower quadrant, whatever, anything, you're just like super confident because in between, of course, I like would read up more on my stuff and go back to my notes. And I had my phone with me. I was like, I'm just gonna look it over. Like there's no shame in admitting you don't know something. And a lot of time, if I absolutely didn't know, I as I got more like as I went through more per diem stuff, as I worked with Wyatt, as with game time things like that, I realized really quickly if you don't know, it's okay. You just either ask someone else that knows more than you, or you are fully able to refer to a ER or something like that if you feel it's necessary, of course.
Hmm.
Um, and you can, especially when it's adult, it's much easier to tell them that this is what you found, this is what you think your differentials are, these are the things you think it could be. If in your opinion this is what you believe is the best course of action, like you whether to go in or not. And at the end of the day, it's their decision, yes, but you gave them the information and the education where they are able to make their own decision, right? That's what it comes down to.
Hmm.
So the first 2 months I would say were rough in a short answer, right? I was learning a lot of things I didn't get to do in school, unfortunately, but I were good experiences to learn on my own. It pushed me forward. And now at the time, I was super confident in my therapeutic exercise because of my background. Now I'm super confident in my emergency exercise, emergency care and acute stuff, and less confident in my therapeutic exercise because now I feel like, oh, that's dropping off because I don't do it as often when I do per diem work, things like that. And as you know, most athletic training settings, you only have like 10 minutes and the whole team walks in, and you can only do kind of patch up work anyway. So you don't get to do the full spectrum of exercise programming. So you get to learn a lot about the emergency care and acute care quickly. Yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
no, for sure. I'm with you with that. We as athletic trainers, there's a lot we have to know, and I think that where we work, it makes a difference on how we specialize in a way, right? For example, at my program at CSUN, we had a clinical site at primary care, for example, which is where, it's a clinic where athletes go and just get evaluated and figure out if they need surgeries, right? Things like that. So athletic trainers there are extenders and they take care of doing the eval. So all day you're just doing evals.
Mhm.
Um, right. And then we also have a physical therapy clinic that's a site. And at that place, for the most part, you're just doing a lot of like modalities
Yeah.
and exercises, right? So it does depend on like your experience of what sites you've had, and then also what job you get once you're certified, to like kind of mature in something, but you are gonna slack in some things as well. Because even if it was like a regular clinic and you did have a football team and you were working with them, for example, like you said, like still, if we have athletes that are hurt, when they come in, we don't have like a full hour to work with them because we have like five other athletes that are there at the same time.
Yeah.
So we're trying to focus on all of them. So it's not always the best case scenario compared to personal training where it's like one
Right.
hour with
Yeah.
just one person. It's just you. I'm focusing on you right now. There's nothing else going on, or strength and conditioning. So it is a little harder for sure as an athletic trainer and our role. But I remember working for a jiu-jitsu tournament as well.
Mhm.
This was when I was still a student, and actually our friend Joseph was there as well. We volunteered. It was a 12-hour event.
Those are
Uh,
long days.
it's long days, man,
Yeah.
for sure. And I remember there was like 5-year-old girls fighting, and
Yeah.
and it's funny because they're like not looking at each other, and
Yeah.
they're like
Yeah.
trying to do stuff. And yeah, when they get hit, they cry, and then like I remember one of them came up to us and she was like holding her finger, and there was nothing wrong with her finger, but she felt like
Yeah.
she got hurt and she was crying, so her mom took her out. But it was funny for sure. One thing that we saw there was a dislocated shoulder, and we saw the athletic trainer kind of guided back. She didn't
Mhm.
really do anything. She was just like she put him on the table, prone,
Mhm.
arm kind of hanging, and then she kind of just like pulled the arm slightly, and that you can just see the bone pop up and go down into place. So that was crazy for us to see that. It was the first time we saw something like that. But I think I had a similar experience with you as well,
Mhm.
transitioning, just kind of like being put in a place where, uh, for me, it was in the industrial setting. So it
Mhm.
was a lot of learning as well in the beginning, just
Yeah.
paperwork and getting familiar with the sort, like walking around and the movement that the employees are doing, and then learning the whole HIPAA thing. So it's hard for sure when we first go into it, but we quickly adapt, right? And we I think athletic training sets us up for that to quickly figure out how we can use our knowledge and get creative and figure things out. Um, so as a newly certified, you've been a student longer than certified, so and I have too. I am too still. But what's one obstacle that you faced as a student, and that you felt like that facing that obstacle and learning from it made you a better person or made you a better professional now that you are certified?
There's a couple scenarios I remember happening to me. Um, most there was two preceptors I can think of right now that were very type A sort of people and very headstrong. And I'm very easygoing, and it's a general rule. And I kind of just like I'll always ask permission for things because I'd rather be safe than sorry. But there's a certain point where I felt in my I'll just talk about it. Like say after after a couple weeks, where I felt like, oh, I'm confident enough where as a student I can make some decisions here, and they gave me lots of freedom. So it's nothing to do with that. They gave me lots of freedom for they would just let me eval my own sort of thing and just like stand back and watch, and then I made decisions about exercise modalities, all that. But there were certain times where the first preceptor I can think of would just call me out, sort of thing, and say like, why did you do this? And it was more of the tone they used that made me feel as if they were attacking me. There's definitely been people like, oh, why'd you do this? Like kind of probing my brain to see why you would do this sort of thing, or to see where my headspace was at, sort of thing. But they were more like immediately in a negative tone and an aggressive way, saying, and then even vocalized that they thought that what I did was wrong, and that I shouldn't do that because I don't because it's a waste of time, sort of thing. And I'll give you the scenario. So, athlete comes in, and I have an hour with them because there's nothing else going on for the rest of the day, right? And they say to me that they have low back pain, and I say, okay, they're out of season. So I'll start with that because that matters. So the preceptor's main issue was that this athlete was out of season, but was still practicing. They was doing conditioning right during this time as a basketball player, and they say to me that they shouldn't be getting treatment right now because we should focus on our in-season athletes. And I say, oh, okay, I understand that, but there's no one else coming in for the rest of the hour. There's at the time there's no other practice or anything else going on. So can I still see them anyway? And they kind of snarfed at me and said, sure, go ahead. So I see at this point I'm bored, so I want something to do, right? So I see them, evaluate them, and I start doing my treatment. And I take the hour because I have nothing else going on. They're the only person in the clinic. And the next day, that person is like, "Why'd you do that?" That same preceptor. I said, "Oh, because I seemed like I had plenty of time. If someone else had walked in, I would be happy to help them, and I would cut their their time short. If an in-season athlete came in, I already had talked to that basketball player thing. If an in-season athlete comes in, and I'll take care of them first because they're priority. So they understood too, and they're like, yeah, I get that. But they're like, no, you shouldn't treat an athlete because an athlete that comes in out of season, regardless of what whether or not they need it or not, because here we're not trying to appease the athletes. We're here to just help them with what we can, and if we don't have time, we don't have time. And if even if there is time, like they're out of season, so just give them ice and stem. Basically, is the short answer. Ice them today. If they come back and still have pain, then we'll figure it out tomorrow. But don't treat them right away. And at first, I kind of just nodded and smiled. Right? I was like, okay. they're the preceptor. They know better. They must know. There must be a reason. And I asked them like, oh, is this like a time thing? Is it a resource thing? Because we had 4 certified sitting around at the time, right? So, and she's kind of like, yeah, it's because we need to worry about doing other things like cleaning inventory, whatever. I was okay, sure, let it go. Next time around, in-season athlete comes in, is in pain, and they defer them to me, right? The certified defers them to me and says, "Can you look see them?" And then I see them again. I have plenty of time because there's no other athlete. It's a downtime, and I do my assessment. I run through it quicker, thinking to myself like, oh, I should go through it quicker just because I don't want to get into any issues with the preceptor. I give them a shorter round of exercises and shorter treatment that was manual, right? At the end of that session, the preceptor says, "Come with me. I need to talk to you." And I already my stomach sinks. I'm like, "Oh God, I'm getting in trouble again." Here I and it essentially was that she had a better tone about it, but it essentially was her. She was saying was you can't take so much time with an athlete, regardless of how much time you have. You because then they learn that you need to. They learn that they need to have all this for treatment. They get used to you treating them for so long, or they get used to you spending so much time evaluating them. And at this point, I'm a little heated. I say, okay, so you're telling me that I need to cut the quality of my eval shorter so that you have more time to what document or what do you need time for it? Because I'm doing the documentation for them. And she snaps back at me, of course, because she's like, here's my tone isn't like friendly okay anymore, right? And she kind of goes, look, you need to go off. She kind of diverts like, you need to go off the science here because there's no scientific reason why you need to take so long on this person. And I tell her like straight up, I'm like, I'm a student. I need to take longer on evals because I'm still learning, right? I felt like I had, and I always try to have a reason why I do anything because I'm always worried about these type of questions, right? This is why I did this manual therapy technique. This is why I did this exercise. They needed this glute strengthening thing, whatever it was, right? And this is why I told them this is what your homework is, formula this, do that, whatever it was. So I try to set them up in a certain way that means like logical that anyone could understand why I did it that way. And I don't get fancy, especially when it's an athlete that just walked in. As I get used to an athlete, I might give them fancier stuff, but initially I'll give them very simple exercises. So long story short, as I was talking to them, I felt like her main thing was laziness, and I felt like I gave her a fair shot in her system, and she just wasn't willing to give them the time. And I think a lot of it is because their preceptors after a long time get used to a high volume and want to condense it, and they want to make sure that they get everyone in. However, I think you should be willing to adapt to the scenario if there's less athletes or there's no one coming in or someone has a higher priority injury that needs the attention. Or even if you think about the mental aspect of it, not every athlete should be treated the same. Some people need more emotional investments, some more actual physical time. Like I know manual therapy isn't necessarily the end all be all, but some people like they respond to touch, right? That's something that creates a connection and a bond. So we need to think about that, not just because of the scientific reasons that this is creating a physical change, but also the emotional investment and the mental investment, right? So what I learned from that scenario is that you won't always get along with everyone you work with, right? You're going to work with people that disagree with you. You're going to work with people that have higher education or less education, or people that are from different walks of life, different backgrounds or cultures, with different mentalities and personalities. And you have to be able to work with them to be cohesive and able to communicate with the athlete that this is why I'm doing this and this is why they're doing that. Not in a negative light, of course, just explaining yourself so they understand. Because even the athletes will see that if you show it. If they see that you're having issues in the back, like having a squabble, they'll notice. If they notice that quality of care is different, they'll wonder why they're seeing you or them. And you just have to explain like this is what they're meant, this was what they're thinking, and this is why they're doing that. And just kind of keep it neutral as much as possible with the athlete or the patient, right?
Hmm.
And in the back, you can talk with your boss or your coworker, or your preceptor, where it might be, but it's something you can handle in the background. So that's kind of what I learned, which had come up a few other times with other preceptors who are kind of headstrong. So it helped out.
Yeah, that's tough for sure
Yeah.
because you are trying to learn from them, right? And so
Right.
you hope that they give you that opportunity to take your time and to grow and to like really practice what you're learning in school, right? They're there to kind of give you those opportunities because of their clinical site, and then at the same time kind of give you their own feedback on how you're doing the evaluation, how you're doing your testing, how you're doing your rehab, right? Like at least that's the experience that I had. Luckily,
Yeah.
I didn't have to face that as a student,
Mm.
but it does sound like it was rough for you trying to do the best you can to practice what you're learning, but at the same time trying to appease your preceptor's system, like you said, right? Like you kept poking at her system,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
and because you were trying to do your job, right? You were trying to practice what you're learning, and I think that is something that I have seen though, where older preceptors that have been doing it for a while, I don't know exactly why they do it, but it does seem like they kind of want to just get them out as quickly as possible.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because the STEM and ICE thing, like I work with the Raiders over the summer, and we have a couple of Dallas players that came
Mm-hmm.
as free agents,
Mm-hmm.
and they said that the main thing they do with Dallas, the athletic trainers at least, is ice and STEM. Like they ice and STEM everybody, and then they're out. So when they came here and they saw all the different things we were doing for modalities, and then also trying to get the PT in there to create a rehab for them. Like when they saw all of that, they were just like, "Oh shit!" Like, damn, you guys do more here. Like,
Yeah.
so they start to take advantage of that and use us, right? And use the different things that we have to help them get better. But it is tough, but it is also a great learning experience for you
Yeah.
because now you can pass you can change that cycle of how you teach other athletic trainers in the future. If you're a preceptor, now you know how to have that conversation in a more neutral way or a more positive way, and you know how you would have wanted to be taught, as opposed to the way that she did it, right? So it
I'll
is a
say this. It did help me in some respects because when I was working under her directly, like when she was overseeing, because sometimes the other preceptor, there was another preceptor that would watch over me, and I had more freedom. But when I was working directly with her, it definitely made me streamline everything. It's like I was very good at choosing what I needed to do that was high priority and how to do it and administer it. So when it came down to like soccer and basketball all coming into the room at the same time, or
Mhm.
even football at the same time, I was very good at getting things done, quick and dirty done. And it did make me better at the quick and dirty. So I'll give her that credit. She made me more streamlined when I need to be.
Mhm.
So there are positives from it too. So.
Definitely. Yeah. Yeah, and you have to be able to have that too. That's a skill in itself, being able to triage and know when to, dive deeper into an injury and when to just kind of patch it up
Yeah,
and move on because it's not that bad, right? Let's come
right.
back tomorrow, reassess tomorrow, and we'll do something else if we need to. For sure. Um, all right, man. Well, so one of the last questions here, one of the main like core questions is just about your activity. And I know you mentioned with your martial arts and working out as well, you're a gym rat.
Mhm.
Uh, is that still it for you? Like, what's your favorite activity and why?
So I've gotten into Olympic lifting a lot lately. So I go to Olympic lifting gym. My goal was to do my first meet in April. This was in February, so those aren't happening anymore.
Yeah.
I still a goal. So next year, depending how things go, I would like to do that. Um, I always found Olympic lifting interesting because it's very technical. Uh, it's a good combination of strength and power, and I like that. And I've never been the strongest guy, but I've always been like strong enough, flexible enough, and powerful enough. So
Mhm.
it's a good exercise for me to learn. And anything that's technical, I like learning because I'm like, oh, cool, it's something I can build a skill on. Obviously, I'm not gonna expect myself to get very far, but I do expect myself to do better as I get better, right? So that's something I'm really into now. I do that a few times a week. I have a coach, so that's always helpful, of course. And I think it's a good activity to do at the end of the day because after telling people to exercise and move better and all these things, and you're just like, you should practice what you preach, right? So I'm like,
Mhm.
oh, cool, I'm gonna go do that. And you'll notice little things, especially when it's an exercise like a clean or a snatch that's very linear. You'll notice your imbalances really quickly. And I have plenty of imbalances, like most people do. And I'm like, oh, this ankle is not as good as this one. My hip hurts on this side. And there's little projects for me to work on and like therapy and that I can do for myself, etc. So that's one of the things I'm doing a lot lately. Another thing that I'm doing a lot lately uh, is I've been playing video games a lot lately. So I just got, I don't know if you heard of this, the Mario All Star game,
Mm,
because so it's three games. It's the Super Mario 64 game, Super Mario Sunshine, Super Mario Galaxy. So growing up, I had a Nintendo 64, luckily, and one of my favorite games was Super Mario 64. So they just re-released it basically for the Wii, the Switch.
nice.
So I've been playing that a lot lately.
That's dope.
Yep.
Cool, bro. Yeah. With first with the Olympic lifting, like I did that for a while too. I took a certification class just to
Okay.
learn in depth more about like what to look for and how to teach.
Yep.
And then I started practicing on my own a lot as well. But with that, the imbalances that you talk about, it is crazy to pay attention to that when you're trying to use your whole body for one movement as opposed to isolating, right, and doing
Yeah.
like a bodybuilding workout. Um, so that's something that I definitely liked, and one thing that I experienced during that was like I had a fear when I was doing when I was getting heavier weight. It was hard for me to like with the snatch like get it past and getting right under it. I
Mhm.
always had a fear in my head of like I'm not gonna make it. So like so that was crazy for me to face. And I've had that with different experiences. Like I used to be scared of swimming. Like I had a fear. So I took a beginner's class and then I got really good. Then I went surfing and I got okay at that. But one day I got caught in a wave and it just
Oh, yeah.
destroyed me. And then my
Yeah.
fear came back.
Yeah.
And so but the relationship there to like weightlifting and having the fear of being under, it was just like if I can just pass the waves and go past them, I can just chill and relax. But
Yeah.
that there was that fear of getting past the waves, and with Olympic lifting, it was either getting right under it or getting under it. It was just like
Yeah.
it's something that I needed to, just face and practice and just get past it mentally. Because physically I could do it,
Mhm.
but mentally it messed me up a lot.
And I've seen plenty of in my gym. I've seen plenty of people like have done dropped it on their head and things like that. And then I always think like, oh God, I hope that doesn't happen to me. I was like, no, that won't be me. But they didn't think that either, right? They didn't think it was gonna be them. Yeah,
Yeah,
it
yeah.
happens. Yeah. It hurts.
Yeah,
I'm sure.
luckily I haven't had that.
Yeah.
I think my fear stops me from getting it all the way up there, so that's good. um, and so for video games, that's dope, man. I think that that's a field that's also growing, and one of the things that I think about in the future that I have in mind is to be able to bring athletic training into that world of gamers.
Mhm.
And I feel like with professional gamers, they would also benefit from having at least some guidance from an athletic trainer from the perspective of like, okay, you're sitting here for a long time. Let me show you why your muscles are getting tighter, or why you're having that lower back pain, or why you're having that wrist and shoulder pain. It's because you're doing these things for so long. So let me show you what things you can do to prevent that pain from being there while you're playing your tournaments, right? And let's work on your health. So I feel like there's an avenue for athletic trainers to live in that world in the professional setting, so like they do at other professional uh, sporting events. Obviously with gaming, acute injuries are not really there, but but chronic injuries are definitely there.
I don't
um,
know. DDR tournament could go bad, you
you
know.
never know. Yeah. They're throwing controllers at each
Yeah,
other,
they're controllers at each other. Yeah.
but that's cool, man. I grew up playing Mario 64 as well. That
Yeah.
was my game.
Yeah.
I wasn't very good at it. I have friends that would like borrow it from me, and I get it back, and they'd have all the stars. I'd be like, dude,
Uh,
yeah. Uh,
yeah.
but but for me, like I like playing multiplayer games, so just so I can play with friends online and use that as a way to stay social as well. But that's dope. I hadn't heard of that combo.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yep.
All right, so we're gonna take a quick break, and
Okay.
then when we come back, I'll run a couple of sprint questions with you, and then we'll be done. So first question is, what is one book that has made a big impact in your life?
So I thought about this question a lot, and one book I can think of, and they're both nerdy books. The name of the first one I think is like definitely influential. It's called Jeet Kune Do. It's the Bruce Lee book.
Mm.
And as you can imagine, with me having a martial arts background, I actually was really late to discover Bruce Lee. I had seen his movies once in a while, but I was really into Jackie Chan and Jet Li. I hadn't really heard of Bruce Lee until I was like older, maybe like teenager. But the reason why I picked up his book is because I heard that at the time I was doing martial arts, and I thought to myself, like, why are we learning one martial art if a combination of them would probably be better? Is what my thought was at the time, and which is funny because now it's like MMA, that's a thing, right?
Yeah.
Um, and he was kind of working on a system in that book where he would combine different martial arts and kind of pick out the best out of them. But what was funny is I thought I was going to read this book and think to myself, like, oh, I'm going to learn how to combine martial arts in a better systematic way. But it's really like a philosophy book. He just talks about perspectives on like keeping your mindset on when challenges arise and being able to adapt to situations, not necessarily physical situations, but talking about how you should adapt to different situations by learning from your experiences and applying what you are able to in a sense like martial arts, you choose what works for you best and help that build you further. And when you find someone that knows something more than you, learn that from them. Right? So go to the experts on a subject and they can help you get better at what you're missing, your weaknesses, right?
Hmm.
So that's something I took home. And later in life, I always feel like I need a mentor in a sense, not for a crutch necessarily, but someone to not only inspire me, but to guide me and also to help me along rough patches. And whether it's in the field or not, whether it could be just like life mentor, things like that. That's something that Bruce Lee was really big on, and which I admire for him for. Like, obviously, his movies are cool. Like, I love the fight scenes and all that, like weird noises he makes. Like, but he was very much into self regulating and building yourself into a better version of yourself every day. So a big lesson I took was learn something new every day. So that's something I try to do every day, whether it's small or big. It's usually not athletic training related. Usually it's like some fun fact that I like, oh, I can apply that in some way. So yeah.
Yeah, that's dope, man. I do like listening to Bruce Lee talk because I feel like when he talks, you can get that
Hmm.
from him, just the way that he's so calm and he kind of just goes with the flow and
Yeah.
he just kind of figures things out and gets by the obstacles. And I I haven't read that book, but I feel like there is the connection between how you train your mind to think and how you make your body work in that same kind of
Yeah.
flow, right?
Hmm.
Um, so that's dope. I mean, obviously a phrase that we always hear is flow like water
Right. Yeah.
from him, and
Yeah.
it just makes so much sense that you can every day you figure out how to like face your obstacles and learn something new and just keep going because we have to. If you don't, that's when like you start getting into trouble in your own head, like you start feeling depressed and lost and like you don't know what to do. Um but I think if you keep that mentality, it's definitely helpful for you as a person.
Yeah. Of
um
course.
for sure. So, second question for you. Is there anything that you are currently obsessed with?
So it's funny you mentioned multiplayer, but I'm really obsessed with Smash right now. I'm playing Super Smash Brothers online.
Oh, okay,
Uh,
yeah.
my current goal is to like, so I've gotten, when you get a certain rank, you get to elite.
Hmm.
I've got one character to elite, which is Bowser, but I want to get at least 10 characters to elite so I can
Yeah.
get good with 10 characters. That's my current obsession. It's kind of like a nerdy loser obsession, but it's okay. I like it. Just because it's funny because you're playing online, and especially for Smash Brothers, you don't know who you're playing with. Like, there's no way to like connect with them.
Hmm.
So it could be like a 40-year-old man or a 5-year-old beating me up, but either way, I want to beat them. So that's what I'm working on right now. That's my current obsession.
That's
Uh,
dope.
my other obsession that's more physical is to improve my dorsiflexion because I've been putting that off for a long time, and every time I get into anything physical, it
Hmm.
somehow comes up, right? Because the first thing that strikes the ground is your foot, so you need to work on your dorsiflexion. So I'm
Yeah.
just trying to work on my ankles right now as my own self project. Yeah.
Dope. Hell yeah. What's so is Bowser your favorite player, the best player
Oh,
for you?
it just happens that I'm better with him. I
Okay.
my favorite character is Sonic for sure, but I'm not great with Sonic compared to Bowser. Bowser's just a heavy hitter, so he's easier to be better with. So yeah.
Yeah. Dope, man. My character has been Kirby.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I like
Yeah.
Curry. You can
I
copy
like
the power.
I like that Kirby adapts to whoever you're fighting with,
Exactly. See,
and
full circle.
yeah, exactly. That's dope, man. And so for dorsiflexion, what are you doing? What are a couple things that you're doing to help you with that?
Uh, I feel like a lot of my restriction is not only because my calves are tight. So some of it is like my own like mobilization. So I do tooling a little bit just to get the neurological effect a little bit, just to calm down the area. Then I do a little distraction with the band. So I put the band around my ankle and kind of walk away from a squat rack or whatever I might use to get some like mobilization that way and kind of move into it with a kettlebell on my knee just to load it. And then as soon as I get that extra freedom, I reinforce it a little bit by doing some active like dorsiflexion with like either a resistance band or something like that. Because I've noticed that I'm very weak at dorsiflexion from a strength point. So my anterior tib is probably not as strong as it should be. So that's probably contributing to why my ankle doesn't allow me to go forward so much. It's probably feeling unstable because I never felt like my calves were weak or overly tight compared to most people. So it might be a combination of that and also my anterior tib's weaker. So usually I'll do that stuff and then go lunge and squat to just kind of load what I just created, that little window of opportunity, right? So
Hmm.
that's kind of what I do. I
Dope.
do that like every other day because I don't get like too obsessive about it. Plus, therapy is not the funnest, I'm sure. Like,
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. That's dope, man. That's dope that you are, paying attention to those little things about your body though, and you're working on them little by little. I think that's definitely important that I think sometimes even people that work out a lot, they get stuck in like I wanna, a big picture, I wanna lift
yeah.
heavier, I wanna do something, I wanna put on 5 pounds of muscle, but there's all these little things that are important for you to have an overall better health and move better.
Yeah, the older I get, the more I realize every time I think to myself, oh, I just want to lift this or hit this number or add this plate or whatever it might be. Every time I do it, and I might get it, but I regret it for like a week. My back hurts, my knee hurts, something hurts. I don't do the therapy as much as I should, which I know I need to do.
Yeah. No, it's hard. It's hard. It's not as fun, like you said.
Yeah.
All right, man. And then the last question, what is your favorite type of food to eat?
Oh man, if you just ask me straight up, my favorite type of food in general would be Italian food. But my
So,
favorite food item is pupusas because I'm Salvadorian, of course. I have to
hey.
pick that. So,
Yeah, that's perfect, man. Good
exactly.
answers, definitely. All right. And so the last thing I want to do is give you the platform for you to give us a last message. Just something you think will be positive or negative, whatever you want to say for our listeners.
So I guess my takeaway from all this is that always have a mentor in the back pocket because that always helps you get better. I really strongly believe that anytime you can learn from someone, you're able to bring them up and you up at the same time. And go with the flow. Like you're gonna have bad situations and things are gonna happen, especially if you're newly certified, if you're an athletic trainer in any profession. You don't be afraid to make mistakes. Everyone knows that when you graduate, you don't know everything. They know, trust me, they'll remind you.
Yeah. No, perfect. Yeah, for sure, man. Thank you for that.
Um,
And so if anybody that's listening would want to get in touch with you, play some Smash Bros or something,
sure,
what's
yeah.
what's a way they can reach out to you?
So my Smash tag is Shady Sonic because I'm a big Eminem fan. So Shady, like Slim Shady, and
Hmm.
Sonic is Sonic's my favorite character. That's my Smash tag.
Yeah.
My Instagram is underscore Gonzalez with a U, like guns, like a bicep, right? So Gonzalez. So there
Okay.
you go.
Dope. Awesome, man. Thank you. Thanks again for your time and for sharing your
Oh,
story, bro. I hope, whoever listens to this can take something away from it.
hopefully, yep.